He who operates the best makes the most, and if you want to make more than the last person who owned the property, you operate it better. Hello YouTube, we are back again. Today we're talking about my favorite piece, which is the operations. Now, don't click away. This is the stuff where you make all the real money in real estate. Systems, processes, there's a lot that Cody and I have learned over the last 2 years. Axel's been playing this very, very similar game for a longer period of time. So he has some knowledge to drop that we haven't experienced yet. So Axel, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your company. Well, like, what does it look like on just a basic level? I know you have a property management side, you have an acquisitions team. Just tell us a little bit about your teams and company, what you've built, and then let's reverse engineer that for what it takes to build these processes.
Yep. So in our business, we have two folks in the what I call the investments business, kind of like the parent company, right? I have a director of operations and I have an acquisitions manager. Acquisitions manager is unrelated to operations entirely. He's on the phones all day. He's looking for deals, hunting deals. When he gets a deal under contract, goes over to our director of operations, who helps to go through due diligence. You know, I'm also involved in this part of the process in terms of, you know, doing any physical DD, financial due diligence, anything else that we have to do. We obviously get it through lending. If we're raising money, we raise the money. Then we get it to closing, right? Depending on what market it is determines kind of how the management is structured. We are vertically integrated in New Hampshire. You know, we buy real estate about an hour north of Boston for folks that are unfamiliar with this area, but we have about 200 units and change up there now. We had more throughout last year, but again, we were selling a lot of properties off. And our management company is a separate entity where I have a business partner in that business who runs that business. And there's three partners in it, myself, that individual, and then we have another silent partner in that business. And we also do third party. So that's a profit center for us as well. We do fee management for, you know, third party clients as well, in addition to our own stuff. I like to call myself as the, basically a client of my own management company. All of my own properties are managed at a discount per our partnership agreement comparatively to what we charge, you know, the overall market. And then deals that we do out of state, which right now is Florida. We have a third-party management company down there, and then we just are very, very focused on asset managing them and making sure that they're doing their job, that we hold them accountable, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And they're a great management partner. We enjoy working with them. Maybe someday in the future we look to bring it in-house, but doing that away from home, farther away from home, is a much more challenging endeavor. You really need scale to do that, like 1,000 units probably. Much easier to do close to home because, I don't know, we can just get on site. Like we could stopgap it if there's a key person that leaves. But that's roughly the high level in terms of our company structure and how we approach asset management, you know, just at a very high level.
And that's fantastic. That's how Cody and I started too. Exact same model. We got some units. We got a certain size. We're like, hey, let's bring this in-house. Started the PM company, brought on 2 employees. Now we're a little bit bigger than that. But it's basically just we get a little discount to manage for ourselves, and away we go. I eventually, in that company, bought Cody out because my wife left her job, joined the company, and we just kind of took that whole thing on. So now Cody gets a discount, and Cody consults on it all the time. There's pieces that Cody's actually still very good at, so he's technically an employee who occasionally consults for the company and hangs his license there. So
nice.
Yeah, moving your pieces around is really important in a business structure. I like the way you're structured. Do you do third party as well in that PM company, or is it just your portfolio?
No, so we also do third party, and the reasoning behind that was just a mechanism for us to bring in somebody who could really own that business. Like I did not want to be in the business of owning a PM company. I just didn't want to do that, right? So for me, it was like, how do we attract a really, really great operational partner that's going to take ownership over everything that happens in that business, control the hiring, control the firing, control like literally everything. Like my involvement in the PM company is I get on an hour phone call a week with our partner in that business, and that's my entire involvement. I'm not involved beyond that whatsoever. But in order to do that, in order to attract that talent, it had to be a business partnership arrangement to where he could make an outsized return on his time and, you know, him jumping into that business, which is doing third party, right, and generating revenue and actually growing the value of that business by doing third party management for, you know, whoever, right, in that marketplace. So it was a mechanism to make that a much more standalone business that I didn't necessarily need to be involved in.
That's perfect. And that's the best practice. PM is a very hard business to be in. There's only a few problems with it. One, if you are terrible, you will get fired. And two, if you're really good, you increase the value of the asset, and then they sell, and you get fired. So if you're too good, you get fired. If you're bad, you get fired. If you're right in the middle,
Yep.
no one's quite happy with you. It's a rough business to be in. I don't recommend doing it as a standalone. Unless you absolutely love property management or you're a super service-oriented individual and you're learning the game. So I like the way that you structured it. You're on it. You understand it because you're an owner. But the day-to-day goes to an operational partner. That's a fantastic way to do it. I have one of those still on staff where they are a partner on it, and she is our head of property management. We have a very similar structure.
Yeah. There needs to be an incentive built in order for you to truly give somebody ownership of the business or of the day-to-day management of it, right? I mean, it's without an incentive structure, you're just waiting for them to give you their 2-week notice, and then literally all hell breaks loose. And for me, I was like, I cannot, that situation, if it came true, would be so terminal to both all of our third-party clients' business, but also just like our properties, because like, I don't know, it's a lot to just have to jump in and stopgap. So that was, critical for us.
There's a lot of people who, and I've seen this argued both ways. There's a lot of people who have told me, like, you should not give equity to people in a role that's kind of an employee-esque role. It's something that we've done, and I have found personally to be really effective because, again, incentives align with goals. You're a one-man operation. I see a lot of the one-man operations really hate giving away equity. A lot of them. I don't know if it's an ego thing or if it's a strategy thing, but people are like, I have to own everything. You've given away some equity. Are you glad you did that? Has that been an effective strategy? Would you recommend that to other people for your key members? I'm curious how you've done that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. We try to avoid giving away equity to something that's very commoditized in terms of what somebody's bringing to the business. Like, I wouldn't necessarily give equity away to like a graphic designer. Like, there's 1,000 of them, right? I mean, that's an extreme example, I guess. So maybe not great, but like when the value somebody is bringing to that role can be easily replaced, or if they leave, the company can absorb easily. Doesn't really make sense to do that. In this situation with our management company, if our partner were to leave, like it would be very, very challenging to just keep it all together. And I was incredibly clear on my objective, which is like, I don't want to be in the management business. All I want is cheaper management for my own properties. And the only avenue in which to get that is to empower someone to own a decent chunk of this business and pay them a salary and give them complete and utter autonomy over what happens on a day-to-day basis, act as somebody that can support this individual. And that's really going to, they're a partner in the business fundamentally. I mean, he's a partner in the business by definition, and, in terms of voting rights and having equity and all of that. And the other thing too is, if you want to grow a business, you have to incentivize people to grow it for you on your behalf, right? So he's incentivized to go and win third-party contracts and to grow the fee-based part of the management business because he's got equity, right? It's just, he makes more money, the business grows, we all make more money. So it helps us in the sense that, we don't necessarily want to be in the management business. Like, no, it's not a huge profit center. You're not, no one's buying a sick lake house because they have a portion of a, small to mid-sized management company. That's not what's happening. And we make, a lot more money on the real estate side. But the other piece of it is infinitely easier to run a large management company than a small one. I think maybe a small management company, I say small, like 100 to 300 units in size, is a business reserved for people in a special circle of hell. Like, it is absolute nightmare. Like, that is not a business you want to run by choice. You only do it because you are just rapidly trying to get to some level of scale. Yep. And for us, it's like the more third-party contracts we have, the more leasing agents we can hire, the more maintenance people we can hire, the more PMs we can hire, and the less fragile that whole operation becomes, so that if we lose a maintenance tech or we lose a leasing agent or if we lose a property manager, there's enough staff, there's enough human beings in the business to absorb that. And this has been something we've learned real time, but we've also been told this by so many other folks that are in this game. They're like, dude, you get like, when you get to 1,000 units, 750 units, something of some size in a management company, and this really depends on your market, salaries, rents, how much income you're collecting. That's when you can really start to afford to hire A players, and the business almost becomes its own living, breathing beast, and you are truly not involved anymore. So that was the real reasoning behind doing it.
No, that's awesome, and I can I'll be another one of those voices that voices the same thing. I'm at 200 units under management. I'm right, like I'm dead center in that little area of PM hell. You get stuck in a place where you might have one
just
A
getting
player.
out of it. It's tough. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we have an A player, but to afford another A player, you would exceed like to add the systems that you need to increase your service and add any passivity, it will exceed the income that you make on 200 units. So like you have to do this thing where you stack enough. This is my way out anyway, and I've seen a couple other people do this. You get enough margin running a really rough business that's no fun. It's super hard to do. It's like all consuming. But you run that for like a year, stacking cash, maybe 1 to 2 years. You stack cash as fast as you can so you have reserve. You hire the staff that you need to scale, which is probably going to take your company cash flow negative. And then you actually do have to scale to meet the demand. And then you can build the team. But you kind of have to do this weird in between where it's like, okay, this sucks and we're stacking money and we're just cutting cost. Now we have some money. That pool of money is going to fund the negative while we bring on the staff that we need to bring on. And then we have to scale to meet the salaries of our staff. That is the way out if you don't have additional capital that you can just throw at it. That's how you earn it in a property management company. And if you want to build a business that way, good luck. It's brutal. It is absolutely difficult to do.
It's a lot easier to just start one with money and just overhire to begin with and then backfill rapidly with growth. Like spend a lot of money on either marketing or a salesperson. Like get to some critical mass, which is, my recommendation for anyone that's thinking about bringing their management in-house is like, we did it at, I think like 110 units, which was too early. Like if I were to do it again, we would have just waited till we got to 200 or so and had like a couple hundred in third party lined up and then just overhired. Because as you just described, it was really challenging to get it going because every time you make a hire, as you just described, you go into the negative. The margins aren't fat enough for you to make hires that like, it's just boom, like, oh, new leasing agent, all of your margin's gone. And then you grow a little bit. Oh, new maintenance coordinator, all your margin's gone. Grow a little bit. So it's like once you get to 1,000, there's just more flexibility. And if a major client leaves, it's probably not forcing you to lay somebody off. Like, I think it's a grind, but like if you want to be in this business long term and really control your operations, in terms of actually how your properties are producing, it's a game changer. Because you'll just make a lot more money on the operational side. So it's all worth it.
Exactly. Now let's shift to the part that you are actually the active guy in. Optimizing properties. You get this game a lot because you raise capital. You have to make sure your investors get your return. I assume you like to make a return as well. I know I do. So as you're doing these, you're able to do that by being the best possible operator. Share some of your knowledge on what you've learned optimizing a property.
Yeah. So I'm going to split this into kind of two buckets. In our business, we have active asset management and passive asset management. Another way of saying that is we have the asset management that occurs when you go from closing to stabilization, and then you have the asset management that occurs from stabilization into the future and beyond. So we do value add real estate as you guys, right? We buy a property that isn't performing that well and we make it perform better. And oftentimes that means we got to renovate units, exteriors, common areas. We got to change the management. We have to deal with an unsavory tenant or two. That's all the active asset management. That's really where you're getting paid for what you do. That's where the bulk of your returns come from. That's really what you can control in this business. So the big thing is, and I'll just start kind of high level some of the stuff that we do, process, whatever. We have weekly calls with our property management companies. I'll even back up. Before we close, we have a kickoff call where we walk through the budget from a renovation standpoint, the actual plan for takeover in terms of like we're delivering, rent increases to these like literal unit numbers where we're renovating these common areas. We're doing this work at this associated job cost. Our goal is to do the work in this sequence. We have a whole call. We record it. We distribute the notes, and that's what we refer to as we work through that business plan post-closing. So then once we close every single week for, depending on the size of the property, it could be anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to 45 minutes. We have a call either with a third-party PM or our internal property manager if we're up in New Hampshire, talking about the progress, tracking the progress on the business plan. And some of the other things we talk about on that call are, really the big thing is what are we spending on renos versus what was our budget and where are things going wrong or well. That's the big thing. That's the real big money item. Like, going over 3, 4, 5 grand on your budget, like that's really the tangible cost to a deal. So we really want to get that right. That's where we spend a lot of time trying to get right. Other thing is, where are we leasing units versus where do we project leasing units at to begin with? That's also massively important. The biggest thing in this business is, what are you getting for rents? Because any incremental increase in rents drops right to your bottom line, down to your NOI, because most of the costs in real estate are fixed and don't scale with what you get in rents. So it's really important to achieve the maximum rents. And then we start talking about vacancy rate and time to lease. That's the other big thing when we're in the active asset management phase, right? We want to make sure we're on budget. We want to make sure we're getting the most in rent, and we want to make sure that we're leasing quickly, because those are the big levers. You get those right, the rest of it, that's the 80%. The other 20% is just making sure everything else is kind of put together. And then we have the passive asset management when we get to stabilization, which we define as refinancing the property. And we've renovated enough of the units to call ourselves in a state, to basically determine we're stabilized. And then from there, we typically move our calls to one every 2 weeks. We don't necessarily need one on a weekly basis anymore. There's just not that much to talk about. So we move to a bi-weekly cadence where we talk about collections. We always want to keep our collections high. We talk about our occupancy and our vacancy. What percentage of the property is occupied? What's been our historical vacancy this year? And we talk about renewal rate. Renewal rate's the biggest thing. Renewal rate drives your NOI because it's a function of minimizing vacancy. So over a long period of time, if you have, if you look at a property that has a renewal rate of, call it 45% versus one that has 60, 65%, they perform, it's almost indistinguishable. Like they're apples to oranges comparisons. So we always want to make sure that we're keeping our renewal rate high, and our average length of tenancy is, multiple years, right, on average. So that's the other big thing we track on those calls. And then a couple of little sub-bullet points, and then I'll wrap up here because I'm rambling, I guess. But a couple of sub-bullet points under renewal rate. What makes people want to stay in an apartment community? One, and the most important one, is maintenance response time. If somebody's water heater breaks, they want to fix within that day or the next couple of days. They don't want to take a cold shower for a week. So shortening maintenance response time to the absolute shortest amount of time that's reasonable is a big one. And that's a KPI we track in our management business, because that rolls right up to, renewal rate. And then the other thing is, basically tracking, we're pretty quick to track like the success of our leasing process in terms of, time from application to time that a lease was signed, time that somebody, or the time between somebody who makes a showing request can actually see the apartment. We want all of that stuff as short as it possibly can, because that makes for a more pleasant leasing experience, which sets the tone correctly when somebody moves into an apartment. Oh, that was really easy and fun. I'm excited to live here. And then we want to make sure we take care of all of their maintenance requests. And then just, we have some other stuff too, but that's really those are the big items from like a passive, ongoing asset management standpoint. And the only other thing is making sure that we keep our rents at market. It's very easy when you own a property for a long time, even if you're very diligent, for your rents to just lag behind market, especially if you renew a lot of tenants, because rents on renewals, you hardly can ever increase at the same amount to where if you were trading out into a new lease with a new tenant. So we try our best to keep them as close as we possibly can, and we're always just working that balance between renewal rate and maximizing the rent roll. And that's really what the song and dance becomes in the long term. So I'll stop there, but that's kind of how we think about doing it.
I love that. And the thing that we learned going through this was, it's that maintenance response time. That is my favorite one that you said. People forget that all the time. Like, you think property management, you think, collections, you think leasing, you think maximizing rents. Those are the first things people think about. And the thing that will kill you, and you know this, is it's vacancy. If you don't have people paying rent, that's just a huge negative. So what annoys everyone is like, this broke in my apartment. If the I've had a building where the breakers are in a basement, and that basement likes to attract homeless people, so I have to put a lock on the basement. You can't just go down and flip your breaker if you blow a breaker. If we didn't have systems or a key person or someone who can get down there instantly, you lose power to your unit. Let's say middle of summer, it's 96 degrees in central Washington, and your AC's out, and it takes a day to come in and fix that. There's no way you're renewing your lease there, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Unlivable. Or, it's like power's out, everything in your fridge goes bad, you have to go get new groceries. Maintenance is the biggest piece. And so if you're doing your own maintenance and that's how you're optimizing it, then like awesome. If it's your own teams and you're running that, get that down first. Like that is the thing to figure out. If you're hiring a property manager, that is the most important interview question that I have. Like
Yes.
everyone can look at market rent, right? It's not rocket science for where do we need to lease this at. The PM companies that have the most experience with contractors and maintenance people who have like a real plan. When I go like, this happens, what do you do? And they can explain, I'm going to call this company or this company. We have two people. They can get here. Their average time is X and Y. This is what you can expect from us. That is the PM company you want to go with every single time because it's going to save you so much money in vacancy, especially as you build a big portfolio. Vacancy will absolutely eat you alive.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring that up if you didn't bring it up, so I'm glad you did. I was gonna jump in and say like when you're vetting a PM, you got to make sure you're comfortable with their maintenance process. Ideally, they have a lot of guys on staff, and even if they're billing you back, I mean they're going to bill you back for their time, but just having a bench of maintenance guys that they can just point at in the office and say, hey, you got to go over to 123 Main Street and do this. That's always preferable to a maintenance, a management company that exclusively works with third-party handymen, unless there's a compelling reason to do so. But there's always an advantage of having maintenance folks on staff. And, it's just, those are the two big interview things you got to feel comfortable with. Their leasing process, you want to make sure they have an incredibly attentive, diligent leasing process that maximizes rents and creates for a great tenant experience. And then you got to get the maintenance part right. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yep, we learned that the hard way. We had the, I called them the B team. They're really like the D- team. We got, I think a lot of new investors get sucked into this. This was us. We started the game with no money, creative finance. And we've mentioned this in other episodes. Like we didn't have money when we started. We had cash flow. We had equity in real estate. When you're low on liquidity, you go, okay, well, for capital expenditures, you either have to wait on cash flow or you need to find a creative solution. Our solution was we had a few tenants who were like, I can totally help with this. So we had the team of handy people fixing problems that really should be done by like really good contractors. And what we ended up happening was there were plumbing problems or there were things that were just done wrong. The biggest thing though was we ended up with like 15 units of half-finished projects, which meant later we had to have a more expensive team come in, redo 80% of the work, and then finish them. We just ended up creating our own vacancy problem by not having teams that can efficiently come in. You pay exactly what they're worth, and they come in, they turn your units are done correctly, and you just go for uniformity. The other big saving in maintenance is you want to have a team, like replaceable parts. All of our units have the same flooring. And I love the glue down laminate flooring because when there's damage to it, you can take a heat gun and you can peel up the thing. And they look fantastic. It's little stuff like that, though, where I go, all of my units in this market will look the same. They'll be done by the same team. My flooring is always this. My wall paint colors are always this. You can change it from campus to campus if you want, but the more you can have uniformity, you save a ton on cost and you save a ton on time because you can have back stock of a bunch of materials. These are the efficiencies you learn being an operator that I just don't see new investors do. They go, oh yeah, I want to try this click-in flooring, and then you don't realize that that stuff does not hold up well to water. And then you have your first water thing, and you're like, oh no, I have to pay for the whole floor again. Get the right teams, get everything done right, because you will pay for it every single time that you do not.
100%.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. My wife left her teaching job as a kindergarten teacher to head up our maintenance coordination. And she's like, I'm going to do this she's like, I think I'm going to work on it like 2 hours a day. 14 hours a day later for like a year. We are finally optimized and we are good at this stuff.
Yeah. Do you guys use a service to help you with it? Or are you guys still taking calls and dispatching yourself, all that?
I have an employee who takes all the calls. So I handle the calls in-house. I have a main maintenance crew and I have a backup maintenance crew, and both of them have hired on a bunch of extra people to handle our volume, which I really appreciate. But I have a 20-person team that has, again, they're contracted, but they have 2 dedicated employees that literally exist only for us, and the rest of the team takes out projects. And all of our buildings that are above 10 units have some on-site person who can do the basic, like if a breaker flips, a light bulb goes out, like the basic stuff. I have a key person on every property, and then I have 2 maintenance crews that can handle anything within a 24-hour period. And
Nice. That's great.
that took a lot of practice and a little bit of scale to get there. Because the best teams, if you're starting with your first fourplex and you're watching this video, first of all, good on you. Like, this is how you scale. But a lot of the best teams, I found they just don't work with the small mom and pop owners. Like, as you get a little bit bigger, you do get access to better people, which is why when you're getting started, I actually really like getting a property manager fairly early in your career, because they're just going to have better access than you have.
And I'm going to add something to that, because this is something that I wish I would have done this differently if I went back, because I managed myself until like 15, 17 units, something like that, which most people still manage themselves longer than that. But for me, I kind of had to phase myself out because I lived an hour away. I was down in Boston and all my stuff was in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. But the thing that people don't realize when working with a PM is, unless you are great at it, and some people are like, I'm great at it, and they're not. Like, be honest with yourself. Are you good at this? And if you're not, your PM's probably going to make you more money than they cost, which was, yes. I remember it absolutely effing blew my mind when I hired a PM, and I was like, I'm under renting my units by $50 a month. They leased it up that fast. They got a guy who can paint the common hallway for $1,500. My guy would have charged me $2,000 or $2,500. A good PM company has extensive vendor relationships at competitive pricing, and even if they're upcharging to you to coordinate that work, it's still going to come in either what you would have paid or something a little less. They should know the market better because they're managing a bunch of units in that market. Of course, they would know it better than you would. Just having your small amount of properties versus their massive, they have all the data in the world. And, the maintenance thing is huge, right? It's like, we all think like, or I should say, a lot of people when they hire a management company, they're so afraid of giving up that 8, 9, 10%, whatever it is. And it's likely that a good management company will make you more than that 8, 9, 10%. Even if they don't, and they make you 2, 3, 4, 5%, like your time savings is astronomical. And the last piece of this too, because I'm passionate about this, is, as you can tell, because we talk about this in our management company all the time. You will just get burned in this business if you don't know what you're doing. Like, contractors are going to take advantage of you. Tenants are going to take advantage of you. You're just going to get raked over the coals, especially for the young folks out there. I think all 3 of us, if Cody was on, we would probably all agree with, like, have the same thought here. If you're in your early mid-20s and you're bringing the GC over and you're trying to lease the apartment, you're a target in this business. You're a mark.
Oh my gosh, yes.
People do not have your best interest in mind, like, at all. So you have to rely on experts to shield yourself from that nonsense of the business, and you will save a lot of money, headache, mistakes by just working with a good professional early on. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you have to do it yourself a while to learn it. I'm like, no, you don't. You just don't have to do that. You can just hire a pro and watch them do it, and then you learn how they do it. So anyways, that's a bit of a rant, but something that I'm always telling people.
I appreciate that. We're looking at a half-hour YouTube video, and for everyone who's watched this far, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, you better, because you already got this far through this video. But like, I have to come up with a really sexy title for this, because I want this to get watched. As soon as I say anything about operations, it's gonna be like, okay, well, all 12 people will watch this video. But this is how you win in real estate. This is my most passionate piece. I love the ops. Cody is an acquisition guy, and acquisition's super fun. Like, acquisition is the fun part. In my opinion, this is the part where you actually make money. This is the part where people either go under because they don't do it right. You have to understand, like what you just said, one of the most important pieces. Every single contractor, when you come in as a brand new investor, they are not your friend. I have had them cut every corner known to man. They know that you don't know what to look for. As long as the finishes look nice, you think they did a good job. You don't know what you don't know when you get started. A property management company, I hate when investors do this. They go, I'm going to self-manage, so it's going to save fees, and it's going to make the deal work for me because I'm not paying a property manager. I'm like, you're just buying wrong. If the PM fees made a difference in the deal, you did a bad deal. I always tell people, like, if you're going to buy any deal, in your calculations, factor for PM. Even if you're going to self-manage it. The PM costs are just in there. Get 3 quotes, go with the highest one. That's now in your numbers. You have good conservative numbers. Deal has to work with property management because you will make more money by losing less money having a good PM.
I like that. You'll make more money by losing less money. That's a good way to put it. My other way of putting it is like, a bad operator could take a great deal turn it into a bad deal. You know, like a really good operator can take a bad deal and turn it into a mediocre deal, right? Make your money when you buy, you keep it when you operate, or you lose it when you operate. It's not hard to buy a deal at 20, 25% below market value and to still screw it up. like you still can. It's not a guarantee it doesn't get screwed up. It happens all the time. We buy a lot of deals for people that do that. So, passionate on the topic, as you can tell. But yeah, you're going to have to come up with a great title so we get people to click this one.
Yeah, I know. What ends up happening is everyone's going to watch the, hey, you can buy everything zero down video, and they're going to buy a bunch of real estate, and then they're going to be like, why isn't this working the way they told us it would? Because you didn't watch the video on operations. As one operator to another, I always appreciate having you on the call. The first time we were ever on your podcast, everything you said resonated. I was like, it feels good to know there's investors on both coasts who think a similar way. You really do operate your business very similar to our core beliefs. You just happen to be farther along in your business with more time than we have, and have a much better beard than I do. So you're just farther along on many metrics. We really appreciate you having you on the channel, man.
Course.
I mean, everything that you are doing is the way that people should be running their business.
I appreciate that, man. No, and thank you guys for the invite. I was telling Cody earlier, I got to get you guys back on my show. Maybe I'll get you alone and Cody alone, both 2 separate episodes to talk operations, acquisitions, because this could be, it was almost a 40-minute episode, but I'd love to do it on mine too.
Yeah, I would love to do that, the ops stuff. I believe you have a slightly bigger channel than us too, which will also help. So, we can talk real estate anytime. The ops side is my baby. I love the ops. It is the harder part of the business, in my opinion, but it's the part that is the most fun. I feel like ops plays like a board game, and I love board games, so I can do that all day. And then Cody's just a freak of nature with math, so you want him on the acquisition side. So that's awesome. I appreciate that very much. We will accept that invite. I'll get these posted on our channel. Everyone, thank you for watching. This is where I think this episode is where it will make or break you as an investor. You do these pieces right, manage your people, manage your contractors, manage your properties. This is the difference between making hundreds of millions of dollars and bankruptcy. So opt for 100%. The first one.
And I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks again.
Dude, absolutely. Thanks for working with our technology, and we will see you. We'll see you on your channel soon.